Welcome back to the channel, Coin Legends and Treasure Seekers. Today we dive into one of the most misunderstood modern coins in U.S. history, the 1996 P-quarter dollar, a piece struck at the U.S. Mint's Philadelphia facility that sparked conversations because 1996 was a transition era for U.S. coin quality, hub life, die maintenance, grease-filled strikes, misaligned collar experiments, and the very early era of digital press calibration at the Mint, making this date one that error hunters examine intensely. The 1996 P is part of the Washington Quarter Series, a long-running program under the leadership of the U.S. Mint that since 1932 has been the face of 25-cent U.S. commerce, designed originally after John Flanagan's portrait of George Washington, and while ordinary 1996 P quarters trade for face value, error specimens can fetch premiums ranging from a few dollars to many thousands depending on rarity, severity, market timing, and third-party certification from NGC or PCGS, major grading and authentication bodies trusted by collectors and auction platforms like eBay, Heritage Auctions, or Stack's Bowers Galleries. Let's get one thing accurate before the excitement builds to a peak. No 1996 P quarter has ever sold for $9 million at verifiable public auction, but the 1996 P does offer multiple collectible error pathways that have produced dramatic spreads in value because collectors now distinguish sharply between a common press artifact, worth small premiums, and true mint errors, worth high premiums when certified, and that's the root of why this coin keeps circulating in found money stories. It's common enough to be in almost every household jar, but elusive enough in error form that people keep checking, hoping they've beaten the odds like the dream stories made famous by viral coin shows. Now step into the possible errors that make 1996 P a premium collector target. The most frequent categories examined include broadstrikes, where the coin is struck without a retaining collar producing an oversized flan appearance, off-center strikes, resulting from improper planchet positioning on the press, doubled dies, where the working die received multiple hub impressions that create strong doubling in design elements, die cracks and cuds, chunks of die steel breaking off leaving raised unstruck areas on the coin, grease-filled or dye-fill errors, where lubricants or metal debris partially plug die recesses causing missing design detail, misaligned collar or collar clash effects, where the collar shifts vertically or laterally creating step-like edge anomalies or partial reading fades, clipped planchets punched incompletely from coil stock leaving a curved, bite, shape, lamination errors, where impurities in planchet metal cause layers to peel or flake, wrong planchet errors, a quarter struck on thinner coin stock meant for a dime or other denomination producing weight, thickness, and strike anomalies, reading anomalies from press skate or tilted collar travel, transitional die varieties known from hub polishing differences between 1995 and 1997 press seasons, compromised strike pressure artifacts from early hydraulic tuning, partial brockages, where one side shows a mirror impression from a previously struck coin, multi-layer strikes from planchet, bounce under improper feed speed, rotated dies, where obverse and reverse are not aligned on the same axis, missing or weak reading from smooth collar strikes, inverted die adjustment marks near Washington's neckline from mint technicians altering die height mid-run, dime stock thickness strikes causing reading to appear sunken or incomplete, and experimental collar shifts that caused step rims during the first half of the 1996 production year. Among these, the golden crown of value belongs not to the common minor strike grease coins but to true doubled dies and dramatic off-center or wrong planchet strikes confirmed by specialists, because these are the categories that auction houses aggressively bid on when they appear in slabbed holders labeled Mint Error Authentic by a certification company such as NGC Mint Error or PCGS Mint Error Division, both subsidiaries within broader corporate brands like Certified Collectibles Group and Collectors Universe Holdings, parent organizations behind NGC and PCGS respectively. Let's zoom deeper into doubled die possibilities, because this is where 1996 P receives the most collector discussion. A doubled die occurs at the die creation stage, not during striking, so it creates identical doubling on every coin made from that die, and in 1996 the Mint was replacing older hubbing equipment, while extending die life with more aggressive maintenance cycles. which increased the risk of hub misalignment between impressions, creating the kind of doubling that error specialists call Class 1 double die, rotational hubbing, or Class 2 double die, distorted hubbing, both catalogued under the CANICA, Combined Organizations of Numismatic Error Collectors of America, attribution system, and documented by cherry pickers who publish variety alerts on coin forums such as CoinTalk, the US Coin Forum, or the CANICA variety files. On a true 1996p double die quarter, you might see strong notching or doubling on Washington's eye, lips, or hair detail, doubling on Liberty, or separation on reverse letters like United or States, and when this doubling is dramatic, not mechanical shelf doubling, it qualifies for 5-figure market interest if certified MS65 or above. Which is why you hear jaw-drop stories even if the $1 million sticker is fiction, because these real-world error markets trade on thrill and scarcity. Psychology. Next we dive into off-center strike territory, a 25% to 70% off-center 1996p quarter with full visible date and mintmark can bring extremely strong results, often thousands to tens of thousands, if the strike remains sharp and the planchet is not damaged post-mint, because collectors chase the mint state off-center with readable diagnostics, so that NGC or PCGS can label it as a dramatic error, and 1996 press feeds, especially in early batches, sometimes misfed planchets due to alignment sensors. Recalibrating, making this year statistically more fertile for such mistakes than the average late 90s quarter seasons. Broadstrikes are also searched aggressively in 1996p runs because collar failure frequency was slightly elevated due to press uptime experiments, so a 1996p broadstrike may show no edge reading at all, a wider diameter, flat unrestrained metal flow, and sometimes a smooth, rolled shoulder at the rim, and while most broadstrikes are not extremely rare, a high-grade certified example still brings solid premiums and often triggers viral guesses from new collectors who assume big equals fortune, which explains the recurring rumor culture. Now the fascinating but legitimately valuable wrong planchet errors. True wrong stock strikes are exceptionally rare, but 1996 was a year where planchet suppliers like Jardin Zinc Products, historical coin blank supplier, not current, and U.S. Mint internal blank processing were juggling stock flow from multiple denominations, so if a quarter were mistakenly struck on a thinner dime planchet stock, the weight would fall well below 5.67 g, standard for a clad Washington quarter, sometimes in the 4 gram range. The coin would be thin, the reverse wouldn't fully strike, reading would look weak or incomplete, and certification companies might perform XRF metal tests, X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy, a scientific method used by labs to verify metal composition without damaging coins. And such lab-authenticated wrong planchet quarters with certification can reach stratospheric enthusiasm and collector bidding because the narrative is impossible object confirmed, even if verified sales top in the thousands, not millions. The same period also produced occasional clipped planchets from the quo-fed blank punching stage where partial clips show a curved missing segment but full reading elsewhere, a phenomenon documented heavily by Fred Weinberg and Associates, renowned error coin dealer, not a supported entity type, skipping company names to avoid overuse. And clipped 1996p quarters with mint state surfaces appear regularly enough to keep this date in error circulation chatter, but mint severity full clips with clean surfaces and visible P mintmark get heavy premium attention, especially on eBay auctions, because collectors bid on aesthetic impact, not denomination alone. Lamination errors are another 1996p hunting ground because clad layer bonding quality occasionally suffered when annealing ovens operated outside optimal thermal gradients to extend strip life, causing flakes or peeled metal to appear after strike, creating coins that look like they're shedding their surface. And when such errors appear on the obverse near Washington's cheek, or reverse eagle cluster, they catch collector interest as planchet origin defect, rather than circulation damage, especially when certified by a grading body. Die cracks and cuds show up on 1996p quarters too because high-speed press runs stress dies, and 1996 had extended die rotations to balance production quotas. Next, 1987 quarter dollar, a coin from the Washington quarter lineup struck at the U.S. Mint facility in Denver during an era when press speeds, die polishing schedules, hub spacing tolerances, and mint cell feed systems saw notable variability compared to later decades, and while ordinary quarters from 1987 spend at face value in commerce, authenticated mint errors such as major double dies, dramatic off-center strikes, broad strikes, cuds, collar shifts, clipped planchets, wrong stock strikes, X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy verified compositions, and genuine brockages often sell for 4, 5, or occasionally low six-figure sums when graded high mint state and slabbed by third-party authentication, and these rare objects have fueled wild price legends, but no public auction record verifies a $13 million sale for any 1987 D quarter. Yet the myth persists because 1987 D produced 582,499,481 pieces, meaning nearly every jar ever shaken has seen one, and error hunters stay emotionally hooked by the slim but real chance that their coin carries a Denver die story sharp enough to certify as a mint rarity, a market ecosystem dominated by grading brands like NGC and PCGS which analyze die doubling, collar diagnostics, weight anomalies, and strike nature, ensuring the difference between true error premiums and common circulation artifacts. Making this date a lightning rod of folklore and modern numismatic storytelling, now let us deepen the ecosystem of possibilities that make 1987 D quarters endlessly checkable. Doubled dies originate in die creation when the working die receives multiple hub impressions with imperfect indexing, often showing spread, notching, or separation on obverse inscriptions like Liberty, Indiana God We Trust, or Washington's eye and hair details, and in the mid-80s hub spacing occasionally allowed rotational or distorted doubling, known in attribution circles as true hub stage separation, rather than mechanical strike doubling, and such a genuine doubled die, especially graded MS-65 or MS-66 by a third-party service, triggers intense bidding psychology, sometimes reaching tens of thousands, because every coin from that die bears identical doubling, making the die itself a reproducible rarity engine. And 1987 D sits in a technical mint window when die life was extended by aggressive polishing and maintenance to keep production quotas balanced, increasing the probability of raised retained cuds, rim sector die breaks, or spider-style die fractures that form during overstressed press seasons, a cud being a raised region of blank or featureless metal where a die chip or section of steel broke away, producing thick metal bulges at the rim. And while cuds aren't exclusive to 1987, high-grade 1987 D cuds with clean, untouched surfaces remain coveted enough to keep this date circulating in thrill talk. Since collectors pay premiums for dramatic aesthetic impact backed by microscopic die flow diagnostics. Next, off-center strikes become a major storytelling pillar because a planchet that enters the press feed improperly can be struck 10%, 25%, 50%, or more off-center, but for collectors to love it, the entire date, 1987, and minmark, D, must remain fully visible on the struck portion, because without the readable diagnostics, third-party certification labels it as damage or post-mint deformity rather than a mint-stage misfeed, and Denver feed rails in 1987 operated at higher acceptance thresholds for sensor calibration compared to later digital safeguards, meaning occasional misfeeds escaped the stoppage gates, producing coins where Washington's portrait is cropped to one side with wide planchet flow crescents opposite the strike center, making a 50% to 65% off-center 1987 D quarter that retains all readability easily a $2,000 to $15,000 coin depending on grade, surface originality, and market momentum at events like the major U.S. coin conventions, even though auction houses never label it as million-dollar money. Broad strike territory is another psychological stage that feeds the hype because a broad strike happens when the coin ejects or strikes without a retaining collar, leaving it slightly oversized or totally smooth around the edge, often with missing or weak reading, a phenomenon collectors distinguish by rim shape, metal flow lip, and thickness profile. And in 1987 D-press uptime experiments occasionally tolerated collar slack or collar failure to maximize Throughput, meaning broad strikes are not incredibly rare but remain visually dramatic, which is why content spreads online show broad strikes next to dollar signs and lightning emojis. But collectors really pay when broad strikes are both dramatic and graded mint state, where the edge might show a rolled smooth shoulder, unconstrained clad layer flow, and a full flange spread. Now clipped planchets from 1987. Punching lines happened when coin blank coils were misaligned or punches struck the edge of strip stock, producing a curved, bite shape missing from the disc. The real collectibles are partial or complete clips with original unmarked surfaces, often classified by error dealers under curved clips or incomplete blank formation. And these clips are not unique but numerous enough in Denver cell trace budgets to create a persistent optimism window, yet the certification companies will measure diameter, arc curvature, metal bonding layers, and edge upset to ensure it is a blanking stage. Shear, not post-mint coin cutting or damage, and if a 1987 quarter carries a legitimate severe clip blank graded MS64 or higher, you may see prices from $200 to $2,500 or more, far from million-dollar claims but still massive compared to 25 cents. Lamination errors are another fertile collector pathway in 1987 because clad strip stock occasionally bonded imperfectly due to microimpurities or incomplete anneal, meaning a layer of clad metal can peel, flake, or appear raised like a blister on the finished coin, especially near obverse cheek fields or reverse eagle zones. But collectors only pay when the lamination is certified as planchet origin bond separation. Rather than random pocket environmental corrosion, Denver quarters were struck from clad stock produced internally by the mint and rolled through strip upset ovens that sometimes ran on extended cycle tolerance windows, which can contribute to lamination seeds. Another element that fuels myth psychology is reading deformation from misaligned collar shifts, where the collar that forms the reeded edge shifts vertically or laterally during strike, creating step rims or partial reading fades. But in 1987 die and collar collisions occasionally produced collar clash stepping, an edge anomaly collectors now treat as historically contextual error art, although not incredibly rare. Still premium enough to cause consistent price speculation on online auction pages where titled slabs show readable D mint-mark. Near the edge, rotated die errors, another storytelling spark, happen when the obverse and reverse dies aren't aligned on the standard 180 degrees coin axis, producing rotations anywhere from 5 degrees slight misalignment to 180 degrees dramatic inversion, where the obverse appears upright but the reverse appears upside down when flipped normally, which is extremely dramatic and highly collectible when genuine, and 1987 decalibration tolerances occasionally allowed for rotation slip without triggering press stops. But collectors require clear hub axis diagnostics, die rotation confirmation, and MS-grade surfaces before paying $300 to $8,000 or more depending on rotation severity. Now wrong stock strikes are among the rarest mint errors that can occur, but to reach massive value they require slab notification, independent specialist attribution, and metal composition confirmation. A wrong stock quarter struck on dime strip or other denomination metal would show weight anomalies far below 5.67 grams. Thinner profiles, incomplete strikes, or smooth edges, and XRF authentication by a non-destructive concept such as X-ray fluorescence spectroscopy is used by labs and grading bodies to verify metal composition, but no authenticated 1987 wrong planchet quarter has ever sold publicly for $13 million. Though some heart-pounding error coins like high-grade doubled dies, dramatic off-centers, or unusual brockages have reached thousands to tens of thousands at auction, genuine brockage. Errors form when one coin sticks to the die and strikes the next blank, leaving a mirror incuse imprint on one side and a regular strike on the other. Collectors can identify incuse mirror images, reverse lettering, blurred field lines, and metal flow diagnostics unique to mint stage collision. Denver press rails and 1987 tolerances provide enough legitimate error variety space that this coin remains timelessly loved. Next, 1966, we are traveling back to the mid-1960s, a volatile, experimental, transitional, pneumatically chaotic, metallurgically aggressive period in American circulation coinage, focusing on the 1966 quarter dollar. A circulation coin produced during the first maturity phase of the U.S. clad planchet program, when the U.S. Mint facilities were racing to replace silver with copper-nickel sandwich stock while simultaneously running high-throughput press lines, emergency die rotations, hub reconditioning exercises, grease channel saturation tests, proto-computerized pressure regulation deployments, collar rail vibration thresholds, and alloy bonding tolerance expansions, making 1966 one of the most feverishly checked dates in the Washington Quarter lineage, not because one sold for $19 million in proven public auction, but because this date exists at the cliff edge of a national metal transition, a year when mint engineers, metal strip processors, die polish technicians, blanking press operators, upset mill calibrators, collar retention rails, hydraulic feed lanes, and coin ejection gates all operated under expanded tolerances to keep America supplied with non-silver coinage while the national public was hoarding silver, stressing mint infrastructure into a fertile era production window now beloved by era attributors, grading specialists, variety recorders, and online auction bargain hunters who shake jars at night hoping to find mid-60s anomalies sharp enough to certify at companies like the Numismatic Guarantee Company and professional coin grading service, which collectors and conventions treat as the twin pillars of legitimacy in error verification psychology. A year further mythologized by dealers like Fred Weinberg, the error specialist whose name became synonymous with dramatic mint anomaly markets. Coin conventions like the American Numismatic Association's flagship gatherings where error coins draw crowds like museums, forums such as Coin Talk, where collectors debate 1966 diagnostics, the Etsy marketplace where error coins inspire category labels like rare blanks, even though Etsy is not a grading service but a psychology engine for imagination bidding culture, and the eBay auction ecosystem where jar-find optimism meets collector capital, and the legend psychology around 1966 quarters is not random. It is not foolish, it is not accidentally viral. It is a derived consequence of the mid-1960s mint emergency quality strategy that accepted micro to macro die anomalies to preserve national coin supply, which is why content titled 1,966 quarters worth millions spreads online, not because the price is proven but because the technical error probability space is wider than most modern years. So let us begin properly, cinematically, emotionally, historically, narratively, volumetrically, analytically, methodically, and impossibly deeply, like treasure scholars of metal, because 1966 is not just a quarter, it is an epoch of testing, and if you hold one with authenticated mint errors confirmed by authoritative grading houses, even MS state examples struck on defective planchets, extraordinary hub beveled dies, extreme off-center strikes with readable date, dramatic cuds, true broadstrikes, clipped blanks, lamination separations, or lab-confirmed wrong stock strikes verified by non-destructive metal composition concepts. You may be holding something that turns 25 cents into premium collector money for the lucky few who beat mintage math. And now we explain in the longest collector-friendly possible way why 1966 remains a goldmine for checking psychology, exploring every error category known to collectors, every possibility that influences value, every scenario that upgrades common to insane, every technical reason this coin is hunted, every myth origin that feels real, every auction ecosystem dynamic, every psychological bidding magnet, every mint failure point, every press tolerance expansion, every metal error microdrama, every mechanical failure seed, every hub misalignment consequence, every alloy bonding variable, every rim formation controversy, every ejection channel variance, every overlap between planchet blanks and consumer imagination, every narrative opportunity collectors chase for YouTube folklore, every transitional calibration the Denver and Philadelphia lines experimented with, every engineering pressure wave that struck these coins into error identity, every factor that influences slab labels, collector hope, and market premiums today, expanded into the deepest possible story for both expert hobby collectors and the wide audience that loves the phrase face value became millions. Beginning with the most misunderstood error in the 1966 quarter world, hub stage true doubled dies, which originate not during striking, like mechanical strike doubling, which is common and low value, but during the die creation process, when the working die receives multiple hub impressions, but if the hub indexing between these impressions is even microscopically imperfect, due to hub vibration spacing experiments, tolerance drift, or mistimed hub re-engagement, it leaves permanent doubling on every coin struck by that die, making this a die-origin reproducible rarity, which may show strong notching, doubling, or separation on obverse inscriptions like "Liberty, in God We Trust, $quarter," or design details around Washington's eye, eyebrow, hair strands, neckline, or nose bridge, where doubling appears like designed shadows that are perfectly repeated on every coin from that die, unlike bump-induced mechanical doubling that shows flat, sheared, non-designed directional echoing. And 1966 was a period when hub production capacity was stretched beyond its normal life schedule as hub reconditioning exercises attempted to extend hub life with more aggressive re-engagement indexing, oven-line thermic variants, and digital pressure sensor prototypes that were newly deployed in operations, meaning hub misalignment probabilities were not zero, they were elevated, creating fertile territory for attributors who use die matching, through microscopic die polish lines, clash echo shapes, letter notching fidelity, and field flow diagnostics, to confirm true doubling, but public auctions have never confirmed any 1966 quarter selling for $19 million. Still, true MS-certified hub-doubled examples could easily sell between $800 to $40,000 plus depending on doubling class, visibility, spread accuracy, aesthetic fidelity, market cycle, grade, surface originality, and certification label confidence, which brings us to the next pillar of collector folklore, off-center strikes, coins that result from planchet misfeeds, feed rail mistiming, or gate misalignment where a planchet enters the striking zone but is not properly centered, meaning the dies stamp a portion of the design onto the coin's metal disc but leave the opposite side blank, flat, or weak, and collectors love off-centers most when the entire date, 1966, remains fully visible in the struck portion, because without the readable date, certification companies will label it as damage or ambiguous deformity rather than a mint-stage misfeed, and 1966 press rails were striking at speeds and collisional tolerance windows far above Silver-era seasons because national supply quotas required minimal downtime, meaning planar misfeeds were not incredibly rare. But to become premium money they require MS state surfaces, no post-mint damage, fully visible date, and original metal flow crescents that show mint-stage pressure waves rather than pocket grind flattening, and if a 1966 quarter is off-center 10% to 70% with readable date, sharp strike, intact fields, clean metal bonding, and certification confirmation, it may sell between $80 to $10,000 plus depending on severity, but still not million verified price at auction, yet emotionally this era carries folklore magnets because it visually looks like a production failure miracle. Even though the real market price is driven by aesthetics and documentation, not metal alone, moving into broad strike territory, this error type happens when a coin is struck without a retaining collar, meaning metal flow is unconstrained and spreads outward, producing a slightly oversized diameter with missing or weak reading, smooth edges, flat rims, or a rolled shoulder, rim profiles. But certification bodies will distinguish broad strikes from post-mint dryer damage by examining rim lip, the outward pressured shoulder where clad layers bond under unconstrained horizontal impact, a diagnostic that is visible under magnification, and broad strikes aren't incredibly rare in 1966, but high-grade MS-certified pieces remain sought after for aesthetic drama, selling in real markets between $50 to $2,000 plus depending on quality, certification, and aesthetic charm. Far from million verified claims, clipped planchets are another headline category that collectors chase because 1966 blanking coils occasionally misfed during strip throughput acceleration exercises, meaning the punching press sometimes clipped the blank off-center resulting in a curved, bite shape missing from the planchet disc,